Welcome to We Question and Learn. This is your host, Tom Pies. We're celebrating our 20th year on the air here at WQLN NPR, streaming live at WQLN.org, with programs archived online at WQLN.org/We Question, and about a dozen other podcast venues, including on YouTube. Right now, I have a very special guest suggested by Brian Slaywin, Director and Portfolio Manager at the Ben Franklin Technology Partners of Central and Northern PA. With me is Rebecca Styn, founder of Blind Tiger, spirit-free, and natural organic beverages, mirroring the classic cocktails of the 20s and 30s. After a good try at political office, Rebecca and her husband opened Room 33 in downtown Erie, PA, then to move on to the Blind Tiger Company.
One of our pillars was investing in our downtown arena. We wanted to kind of put our money where our mouth was. It needed to capitalize kind of on the background and skills that we both had in some capacity. And having worked in hospitality and in marketing and communications and such, and my husband is a big history buff, so that's kind of where the whole bookcase, book front thing to Room 33 came to be. We just kind of combined that. And then that's the beauty part about starting a business sometimes, is just hiring the right people to help you run it. And that's what we did. You know, we brought the idea to life. It's pre and post prohibition area. So when you go in, it's everything from like the 1920s all the way through the 1940s and 50s. And we had a great team. We still have a great team, although I'm not the majority owner of it anymore. The team that started with us stayed with us. That's kind of what kept us going for quite a long time.
So when did you get in touch with Brian Slaywin at the Ben Franklin Technology Partners?
So during COVID, when we were mandated to take out only, so at the time, 90% of our sales had come from the bar. And initially, Tom, I don't know if you remember, but we were not legally allowed to sell alcohol to go. They did bring that in a lot later into COVID, where bars and restaurants were allowed to do that, but we couldn't do it. We had to come up with some other options because I didn't want to close our doors. So we started bottling non-alcoholic versions of our cocktails. And we had a really great response from the community with these. And in my insanity, I woke up one day and was like, I wonder if I can't bring these to market. So I went to my team and I asked them if they'd be interested in helping come up with the original recipes. I had already had a shell of a company that I established called Blind Tiger, which is a moniker for speakeasies. And I had found out that Ben Franklin Technology Partners was about to launch their Big Idea competition. And I had not even started my business plan or anything at that time, but that really kind of prompted me to get moving on it. And even though at that point they really hadn't gotten into the food and beverage arena much, you know, they're very heavily manufacturing technology, though they've expanded into those areas since then, and targeting a bunch of different entrepreneurial arenas. I pursued the Big Idea competition and somehow miraculously won the $50,000 grand prize. And that's kind of how my initial, connections with them started. So.
It's interesting because as Brian was on the air here in an interview recently, there was quite a few hurdles to jump over in order to even begin to be considered for the $50,000 prize. And I was teasing him a bit. I said, this isn't science. And then I realized, as he corrected me, there's quite a bit of technology, et cetera, involving setting up a business like this. Do you want to comment on that?
Sure. I mean, in the manufacturing sector alone, the main difference between what I do and what a manufacturer would do is the manufacturer would actually produce the product. And we didn't have the capacity or the capabilities at the time here in Erie to actually manufacture the product. So coming up with the actual beverage itself, the ingredients, the supplies needed, and to make it pasteurized and shelf stable and everything required the work of a beverage engineer. And then just to even source everything that would be needed to do that and to find a manufacturing facility that could produce your product for you. And as a startup, you have to start smaller. But I was sourcing every single aspect of it, working out whatever it was, the labels or the bottles or the cans, the design, like everything from A to Z. And, ideally, the initial concept was one day we will build a co-manufacturing facility in Erie where we can produce not only products like mine, but others out there that want to get into the food and beverage industry. And that's still something I kind of hold on to the back burner a bit, hoping that if anything, it could become a legacy company to do something like that. But there's a ton of different elements in it that really drive the manufacturing part.
We're talking with Rebecca Styn, founder and CEO of Blind Tiger Spirit-Free Cocktails. Now, I understand there is a hefty valuation on your fine company, $4.5 million. Congratulations on that. And you went from founding Room 33 Speakeasy Restaurant to suddenly having a tiger by the tail. Forgive me for using that phrase. How did that come about? That just seems like a magical jump from A to B.
In some ways, it is a magical jump, right? And it's very serendipitous. So when we won the competition, that was a serendipitous moment for me. I felt like I really had to take what we had just kind of started to create and really exemplify it and help it scale, even at a small level. So Ben Franklin has been integral in many ways for our growth since we initially launched, because they also offer additional follow-on funding in the realm when we first started through convertible debt. And they gave us, extra funding to kind of at least start to hire the team to really build out our company. And then I started pursuing other avenues of investment as well. And I initially went through an accelerator called Expert Dojo, which is out in Santa Monica, California, and it's industry agnostic. And they took us on, they gave us an investment, and then the core curriculum that kind of helps you scale your company. And it really is just, a lot of trial and error, plenty of error throughout all of it, but just finding, continuing to just be resourceful and look for things that align with what you want your path to be for your company.
Let's talk about Expert Dojo. They are extremely active. They're in California, but they're all over the world. How did you find them, or did they find you?
Yes. So interestingly enough, I had pitched to another investment group that was in the Pittsburgh arena, and they suggested I reach out to them. So they have a very basic application online, and I went and filled it out, and then I was called by one of their analysts, and then you go through a process. And they were the ones that gave us our initial valuation, which at that time was $2.5 million. But that kind of helped us at least set a launch pad for me to work for trying to get additional investment and to actually have the credibility of a company that kind of says, okay, this is what you're worth and this is where you can start to seek funding. So even though we have that $4.5 million today, at that time, I still conducted an equity round outside of Expert Dojo for another $500,000 and received other funding prior to this time. And then we've seen a lot of growth, obviously, in the last couple of years. And that's kind of why we're at that $4.5 million. It's a pre-money valuation right now.
Paint a picture of the product. It's radio. This is sort of difficult, but if I was to hold one in my hand, what does this look like?
So we started with bottles, but we kind of moved towards the little tiny slim can formats just for ease, and the customer seems to like those better. But they're really elegant and charming. They're very Art Deco in nature. Each one of them has kind of like an emblem on it that looks very Art Deco, and it has feathers, and it just looks, from the 20s, 30s, 40s. And they're all different varietals. We currently have the bees knees. We have a Southside that we just made into a Southside Mojito. It's a little bubbly version of it. We have a Lavender French 75, which is this beautiful floral pink drink, and these are all natural. We don't use any artificial flavors or colors, no preservatives. So they're really, they're better for you ingredients. And then we have a sidecar mimosa, and we currently have a Ward 8 cocktail, which is a smoky citrus drink, and I love it, but it's a very interesting profile, and I think we may move that out and fly it in a Manhattan in early 2025.
Now let's talk about this. Who would have thought spirit-free cocktails would go good into a very stressful era in our country? How did you come about with that idea? Explain the challenge.
So I had actually started to notice it a little bit before COVID, that there was a company out there that I had not actively become engaged with, but just was purchasing their product called Lyres, Lyre''S, and they do their spirit-free spirits, and they're a European company, and their products are magnificent, and they've pretty much killed it in the non-alc market since then. But that was really starting to kind of come alive in 2019. I think in 2020, when we all went into the pandemic, everybody was drinking really heavily, right? So at some point, people were like, okay, maybe we should stop doing this. And then I think that's when it, was a pivot for some other groups, different demographics that were like, I really should stop doing this so much. So that's when we saw more of it come over here into the US. And it's still, Tom, it still needs to make a much bigger impact across our nation. It's growing in bigger cities, but the smaller cities still have a lot of catching up to do.
So with that, how did you manage to create, I'm going to say, a huge manufacturing mechanism here? This just doesn't get bottled in someone's basement.
No,
No,
yeah, no,
yeah,
it doesn't.
yeah.
Um, so yes, initially when we launched, we found there was nobody around here who could fill our product because of the pasteurization and shelf stability of it.
Mm.
But so we had to look outside of Erie, unfortunately. The only company that probably could have done it is Welch's, and Welch's has their own thing going
Yeah,
on.
they have their own thing. And they're not here
Yeah,
either when you get down to where their corporate
right.
headquarters is. Right.
So we started with a small plant in California, in Cleveland, Ohio, and she helped us get to the next level.
Mm.
But then it was through another, just through word of mouth, and another an investor colleague of mine who had a connection to a plant out in Clintonville, Wisconsin.
Mm.
And this particular company, honestly, Tom, has been magnificent. They're called Artie's. They do everything. Like, they have all the nuts and bolts of beverage manufacturing down. They do alcohol and non-alcoholic products. They do bottles and cans. Like, they're a really great mid-tier company to work with. I mean, if we're ever lucky enough where we're like truly national or international, I'd probably have to scale to somewhere else, or maybe we get to build it here. I don't know. But either way, they've been really great for us. So it's been a blessing to have them as a partner.
Now, this has not just been sitting on the shelf, forgive the pun. You've entered this in competitions, and you've won a rather large or several competitions across the country.
Yes, we've won 29 to date,
Oh, a few, huh?
including, yeah, and including, so San Francisco World Spirits Competition, which is the most renowned competition in the United States. Every year for the last 3 years, two of our products, our Bee's Knees and our Ward 8, have taken home a double gold every year, which means you get gold across the board from all the judges in the competition, which is wonderful. And we might have, and I can't share it now, but we have some other exciting news from an award perspective, but I'm kind of embargoed, at least for a little while. But I'll come back to you and let you know when we can.
Last year, you did an outstanding, actually an incredible amount of revenue growth. Talk about that for a second, please.
Yeah, obviously we all want to see more of that, right? And in full disclosure, we're not profitable yet. So, which is why the investment in scaling is kind of, important to us at this point. We do plan to be profitable next year. Our first year, obviously, sales were a little bit lower, but last year we grew by 222% and achieved $350,000 in revenue, and we're slated to do $1 million in revenue this year. So,
plus the awards. Now, big question, and if anybody watches that interesting television program, which we'll not mention, you've accomplished something that they always challenge the guests, and that is you're in 1,000 retailers across the country. How did you manage that?
Early on, and like I've said, this has kind of been a serendipitous journey. And oddly enough, there was this group called the Navigator Lighthouse Foundation. They are also in California. They're in Southern California. And ironically, when we literally first launched, the Erie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership had sent out a newsletter, and every once in a while they do these little bits of things where you should go and check out. And for some reason, and I'm not sure why or how, this particular group was listed in this newsletter. So I went and checked them out, Navigator Lighthouse Foundation, and it's a group that supports women and minority consumer packaged good entrepreneurs. And they had literally just launched this foundation, which was designed to really get you everything you needed to know in order to even launch your company. So I applied for it. It was very minimal. Minimal cost to do. It was like $300 if they accepted you. But the access to resources and things I might have not known otherwise were so invaluable. And that led me to a pitch competition by the California Grocers Association back in 2022, out also in California. So we flew out there. We pitched out there, but we pitched to these big retailers, right? Like Albertsons and Sprouts and Bristol Farms and all these different places. And you could have gotten what was called a golden ticket, which meant you would bypass everything and get into the stores without any issue. I did not get any golden tickets. I did come in second place, but I did get into Bristol Farms and then ultimately got into Sprouts because of these. And that's just kind of how these things kind of came to be, right? Like there were always these little moments, these little nuggets of things and information that would come my way, and I would just pursue it. And let me say, Tom, as much as it's worked out, it hasn't worked out too, right? Like for all the things that I'm telling you are great, there's a million that million things that don't work. Like, it's not like there's so much more to this journey than just the highlight reel.
I can't even imagine. Now, you have a team of how many?
Well, now it's two full-time people.
Okay.
Yeah, we have some contract employees, but we recently hired a VP of sales. His name's Ron Manna. He's actually out in Oregon right now. We have a set of grocery stores. There are like 19 grocery stores that work with us out there, and he's out there visiting them and meeting with the team.
So you're busy making calls. This is not easy. I'm getting the picture that everybody's sort of glad-handing you and congratulating you. And now I hear, ooh, there's a touch of stress in all this. And I think that's typical of an entrepreneur. Am I close?
Yeah, it is the hardest job I've ever had in my entire life. And it's the least amount of money I've ever made.
But you indicated that sales may be up for next year. How do you manage that? Your sales team, you're all out pounding the pavement?
Yes. So me and Ron, and then, but we're doing a raise. We're doing $1 million raise, and that money will go towards really expanding our team and adding a key like operations person and another salesperson, and then some brand ambassadors to really better support the areas that we're already in.
Well, you still have your facility downtown to use that as a headquarters?
No, you mean room 33?
Yes.
No, we don't. I mean, we use it as kind of like I use it as a mailing address, I guess you could say, for us. But they carry obviously and highlight and sell our product. And my husband is still minority owner. But I'll tell you, I wanted to potentially get into a low alcohol sector with our product. And you cannot legally have a liquor license in the state of Pennsylvania and launch an alcohol-based product at the same time.
Is that right?
Yeah, so that was the driving reason I had to get my name off the liquor license.
It sounds like you're playing a chess game here. Every time you make a move, someone moves something in front of you. Now, you've made some projections. You've got a small, lean, and mean team, if I can compliment you. Where do you see this in about 2-3 years? I know you feel it, or it's successful just by the brands you've put out in the real world and the number of people that are interested in them, and the fact that a venture capital firm finds you interesting. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, so our hope, honestly, our first hope is we get acquired. Either by a company like a Diageo or an Anheuser-Busch that really can take our product to the next level. But that will take some serious growth on our part. And then, as I've kind of mentioned, if it's a viable opportunity, it becomes a legacy company, and then it becomes more than a brand, right? It would have to become a manufacturing facility, something that would really create jobs and opportunities for the community. So those are my two goals. That's what I'm hoping. One of the two I'm hoping for.
Okay, this may be an off-the-cuff question, but what do the health food stores think of this? Is this something that may be on the shelf in a more health-related business?
Yeah, so when we first launched, we work with one national all-natural and organic distributor called KeHE, and they service all the major, not only just the health food stores, but the natural and grocery channel stores and everything out there, like the Whole Foods of the world. Mm-hmm. So because our product does fit that criteria, we've done well in those particular locations. We haven't made it into a Whole Foods yet, though I would love to.
Yes.
But yeah, it's definitely an opportunity, and it does fit what they look for.
Have you garnered any support from the local retail folks, maybe one of the bigger chains, grocery stores, etc.?
Yes. So we initially got in with Giant Eagle, and we have a beautiful set in Giant Eagle, Yorktown right now. They've given us so much space, and it looks stunning. It's over by the beer line. And most recently, we got into Wegmans, but we got into almost all the Wegmans. So we're in like 99 of them throughout a couple of states here. And then the Erie Food Co-op has taken us on. And we were lucky enough, actually, we're about to launch with Erie Beer as a distributor partnership. So that will be our first local distributor partnership. So we're really looking forward to hopefully scaling those opportunities community-wide.
So in your opinion, how is the non-alcoholic market? Is it growing? Is it something that people have become influenced or moving towards because of, say, the pandemic era? Is this growing?
I definitely believe it's growing. It has a segment of individuals, and these are typically like millennials and Generation Z that are seeking healthier lifestyle options. And I think that trend will continue to go up because they're not drinking as much as we did or we do. I still love a good cocktail and a glass of wine.
Yep.
And so I know I will never eliminate that, unless I'm forced to, which I hopefully am never not, or never have to do that. But I definitely think it's growing for a certain demographic of the country, and the statistics would support that today. Now, whether it's exponential growth is to be determined, and whether it's adopted by the retailers around the country that really see it as something outside of like a mixer or soda, right? To really give it its dedicated space in order for people to understand that this is an adult alternative option.
Gotcha. Well, you have over 25 years in hospitality, marketing, sales. Are you managing all the media yourself?
Yeah. I'm doing it all right now. Just because in order like to do it costs a lot to get press. I don't know if you know that.
Yes.
In this arena, it's a pay to play sort of.
And have you hired someone to help you?
For the press arena?
Yeah, for the media press, for marketing. Or are you still doing it all on your own?
So I handle a lot of it, but I do have a part-time digital marketing analyst. Her name is Caitlin. She's wonderful. She's based in North Carolina. She handles all our social media and everything associated with that. And I have somebody who handles our Amazon fulfillment, and not the fulfillment. I actually still ship our products out myself, but they set up our fulfilled by Amazon pages and our emails. So I have other teams in very much smaller capacities taking on certain roles.
You sound like you have folks from all over the country. They're not sitting in your backyard here. You're doing a lot of online, telephone, etc. work. Is that working out for you?
Yeah, it's great. It's really important to me to have like the core members of my team here, like Ron, who's our VP of sales, when we have an operations person. I think it's important. That's not to say it can't be done remotely. I just think it's easier to build a strong leadership team when you're kind of present with each other. And if that opportunity can happen, that's what I will continue to strive for. But I will be open to take whomever is the best fit, no matter where they are.
I know that you can't give me the secret formula, but this had to come from somewhere. Did you develop this yourself? Did you have some folks help you out? What brought the formula up? How did that work?
For the recipes for the drinks?
Yeah.
Yes. So we have a teammate. Her name's Elizabeth Heffernan. She is now part owner of Room 33. She actually came up with the original recipes. And I went to her and I told her that, I wanted them to be all natural. We could not use we could not use spirit. So she had to find ingredients, all natural ingredients that would kind of replicate the taste of a spirit. So as an example, in the bee's knees, you use juniper or you use gin. So she would use juniper when creating the profiles of the drinks. So then at that point, we sent them to a beverage engineer so she could create them using similar ingredients, but helping to develop the formulation so that they would become shelf stable and pasteurized.
And all that's done here in the United States?
Yes, the woman we work with, she's in the lower part of PA. She's a beverage engineer, and then I source all my ingredients actually mainly in Chicago area.
That's fascinating. Congratulations on doing that. So you're not going to suffer from the border wall going up for some reason or another.
Yeah, no, I know. I understand getting some certain supplies and everything from out of the country, but we source everything within the U.S.
That's a accolade to you. Congratulations on that. Have you tried to get any other venture capital? Anything else going on that might help you out here?
Yeah, I'm working with different groups. We recently got an equity investment from Ben Franklin Technology Partners, and we're going to get one through the ICE Angel Fund. There's some criteria to be met, but that's kind of a nice little bump for us. But we also recently launched a WeFunder campaign, which is an online equity campaign, and anybody can participate in it for as little as $100 and get a little piece of Blind Tiger. So we're trying to do everything that we can to support this, what is hopefully $1 million raise.
So do you see your company developing any new kind of technology? Is there anything involved, say, in the formulary that you see? Anything innovative? Or, hey, it's business as usual. Let's get to work, gang.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll invent any new technology, at least on the near horizon. We'll continue to create new varietals, and we will probably get into the low alcohol scene here in a little bit. But otherwise, it's really just creating a better for you option for adults.
Rebecca Styn, founder, CEO. What a great opportunity this has been to be able to talk to you about a wonderful endeavor. Congratulations on just getting Blind Tiger Inc. off the ground. I hope this is very successful for you. Certainly, it's an accolade to you, and thank you for being in our community. It's nice to see an entrepreneur growing up in our backyard. Thank you very much. Really appreciate talking with you today.
Thank you. Likewise. It's been my pleasure.
This is Terry Gross. Often when I'm interviewing people on Fresh Air, they give me a different way of looking at the world.
We all thought our bike was cold in the rain, that our fish was lonely in a fishbowl, that a leaf would be afraid of heights when it fell. It's just the way we looked at things.
Join us for new ways of looking at things on Fresh Air.
Today at 3 on WQLN Radio.
I'm Jesse Thorne, the host of Bullseye. Bullseye's your guide to what's good in pop culture. Every week, I'll sit down with people like Elvis Costello, Elizabeth Banks, and Spike Lee to talk about their creative work and their lives. Find your new favorite TV show, book, movie, or album and gain new insights into the things you already love. That's Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Saturday afternoon at 2 on WQLN NPR.
Welcome to We Question and Learn. This is Tom Pies. Our program is now celebrating 20 years on the air here at WQLN. We are also online at WQLN.org/We Question. We are on about 15 other podcast venues, including NPR One. So we're always happy to have great guests, and I'm really happy to introduce Laurie Zierer, Executive Director of PA Humanities. And I'm looking forward to this interview with you, Laurie. We'd like to get people a little more familiar with you and your staff and what you do. So welcome to the program.
Oh, my goodness, Tom, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's really a gift to be able to share what PA Humanities does across the state and locally in the Erie area.
Wonderful. Well, let's create a primer here. First of all, let's educate the folks as to what the organization is, how it was established, just some basic information of how, oh, by the way, happy birthday, 50 years for your organization.
Well, thank you so much. I was going to say, Tom, that you're celebrating your 20th. We're celebrating our 50th. Now, I've not been with the organization all those 50 years.
We know that, yeah.
So thank you very much. But, we've been around for 50 years, and we're, this is going to be a mouthful. We're the federal state partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities, a private nonprofit, not a state agency. And what does that mean?
Yes. I was trying to garner this from some paperwork on the website, but this sounds somewhat complicated, and it also has a very long history. So can you educate us a bit, please?
Yes, absolutely. Because it is our 50th year anniversary, I actually, I'm a historian. And love to get in old boxes and go through the archives to learn about our organization. And we were founded here in Pennsylvania by a group that spanned different kind of sectors. It brought together folks from the media, state government, colleges, universities, community groups to establish a group. We were called the Great Experiment back 50 years ago by the National Endowment for the Humanities, because there was this big idea in the early 70s that we could, across the state, come together to have conversations to bridge difference. And if you think about the early 70s, there was a lot of distrust of government, of colleges and universities, of experts, not too different than today.
Oh, right.
And there was the idea that the humanities could provide a means to think big and to bring people together. We were originally called the Public Committee for the Humanities in Pennsylvania. And we were so progressive, we were called HIP, H-I-P for short.
Wonderful. This is post 1970, maybe 73, 75, somewhere in there. '73 you started, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so I was actually talking with the first executive director, who is still alive, Dr. Charles McKay, and he's excited about our work today, as he was back when. We originally started giving out grants. And we gave grants out all across the state to bring people together to talk about issues that were important at the time. A lot around, it's interesting to see some of the original grants. There were conversations around new immigration, around flooding, around local government. There were all issues-based kind of conversations. And, similarly, we use the humanities today we put them in action. I like to say that we take the books off the shelves and put them in people's hands to take action in their communities. Because many times folks see the humanities as just subjects. We try to see the human connection in the humanities. We see the humanities more as a verb than a noun.
Well, okay, let's talk about energy. How many people do you have involved in your organization right now?
Oh my goodness, we have a great staff of about a dozen. We locally have in the Pittsburgh area a storyteller and project manager that helps us on that side of the state to expand our programming. And we do a lot of traveling. I have to tell you that I was just in Pittsburgh on Friday, traveled out there for a program myself. And so we are all across the state all the time.
Always visiting one part of it or another. Well, is your staff stretched thin because of the geography, or do you have folks sort of, as in the case of Pittsburgh, residing in the area that you're working in?
Well, we are lucky to have a statewide board of board members. And in fact, in the Erie area, our board chair, Gwen White, is a governor's appointee. And we have geographic diversity with our board members. So right now in the Pittsburgh area, we have 4 board members who are from Pittsburgh. So that keeps us very connected to the local community and able to be responsive to local needs.
Now, how did you get involved with this organization? Did they find you, or was it a mutual meeting of the minds? How did this work for you?
Well, I was, at the time when I started at what is now known as PA Humanities. Back then, we were known as the Pennsylvania Humanities Council. I had just finished my master's degree at Penn State. My background is I was a high school English teacher for a number of years, and my background went to Temple in English literature, and then took a break from teaching and went to Penn State to focus on rhetoric. I was very interested, I know, very interested in not only classical rhetoric, but also the importance and the role that storytelling narrative plays in our lives. Stories are the things that bind us in our families and in our communities. And I spent a lot of time at Penn State thinking about that and how storytelling could be used to bring people together. And that's one of the, I think, landmarks of what we've been able to do at PA Humanities is to lift storytelling, to connect, build identity, and really empathy among different people.
Well, we're very close in the fact that you believe, I'm thinking, and I believe that fundraising should be storytelling, offering examples, not just coming out directly and asking for money, but showing by example or presenting success stories that help someone understand that their donation, their energy, their volunteerism is indeed important in the community.
Well, persuasion hasn't changed much since classical times. And I used to say in classical times that a persuasive speech or a written piece was part ethos, pathos, and logos. They had to speak to the heart, to the mind, and move people. And a big part, also with your reputation, ethos. And pathos is that story,
Yes.
that storytelling that is so important. And that's a key part of the humanities, because we know that we are human, and the best of our humanity through the experiences and acts of others.
What's a typical day or a typical week for you? I'm sure your to-do list changes hourly.
Well, I have to tell you, one of my most exciting times is to be connected with our PA Heart and Soul Network. I know that you've recently talked to about Community Heart and Soul.
Yes.
Yes.
What an incredibly interesting and grassroots, once again, show by doing rather than begging type of organization.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's a beautiful program. We have been in more than 16 different communities, many near you. Not only we started as a pilot almost a decade ago. Next year we're going to be celebrating a decade with Community Heart and Soul.
Wow.
But we piloted in Meadville.
Yes.
And locally now we're also in the Venango area, Tidiute. I love going to Tidiute to see how the program is developing, and also Youngsville. It's an incredible program where it is an invitation and opportunity for residents to take those books off the shelves and use storytelling for good. Residents build leadership teams to collect stories around the most important question that will bring a community together. What do you love most about your community? And residents collect those stories and identify what matters most and play the long game to work with the community to identify those values and embed them in local government and in local decision making. It is in so many ways a very grand research project.
Yes. Yeah.
Where a community comes together to discover what they care about most.
Now, do you need a geographical location, or is it just open-ended?
Well,
People just come together and have some fun and talk and do some educational work, or is this a little more organized in a classroom or meeting scenario? How do you manage these meetings?
Absolutely. We work with leadership teams in different communities, in different size communities. Tidiute is a very small one, but we also work on a county level, like the project with the Venango County.
Mm-hmm.
We try to make sure that it's within no more than 50,000 in population, and we manage it depending upon the size of the community and the needs of the community. But this kind of storytelling, this kind of storytelling works best by going where people gather, at festivals, at farmers markets, you name it. We'll be there within the community to capture stories. We look at it as, let us know on a sticky what you care about most, but also collect deeper stories to find out. Tell us a story about what you value most in the community. And people are so willing to talk about the positive, wonderful things that they love most and they cherish.
So you gain the interest of, say, maybe one or two or even a dozen local individuals, and they sort of help you carry out your program?
Yep, and they spearhead it. And what's beautiful about it is that it's, for local government, and we work with the Department of Community and Economic Development on co-supporting this program. We're really providing the technical assistance, the process for doing this work with local residents, and they are opening up and really sharing the knowledge with local government, hand in hand with local government. So this process really allows to bubble up new leaders within a community. I know that you're very interested in how kind of leaders are developed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
here's a story from Meadville. It makes you think totally differently about the humanities, I think, when you hear the story. That as the Meadville local group got together and identified who they should be reaching out to collect stories. They realized the most important person in the entire community who knew everyone was the person who delivered flowers in
Oh my
Meadville.
goodness, what a thought. Excellent.
When you think about the humanities, you think, oh, I've got to pull up that book, or I've got to get that expert that knows this particular data about something. No,
Yeah.
the expert in the room was the flower delivery person. So it really changes your thinking about the humanities when you put people first, and when you think about the human connections that you have and how we are connected to one another and how that is so important to our well-being and the health of our communities.
As you look at the history of your organization over the last 50 years, has it changed dramatically? Has it just improved or changed as time goes on, as societal needs change? How do you feel that's worked out over the years?
Well, we intentionally did shift to redefine and reframe the humanities about a decade ago after I became executive director. And, there were real reasons for us to rethink the way that we were really supporting and serving the state of Pennsylvania, because up until that point, we had really looked at the humanities as subjects, that we were going to offer programs of appreciation of history, languages, literature, and that work is so important. Don't get me wrong. But what we found was that it needed to be reframed and redefined because there were real needs that we could address. And in particular, I talked about the Community Heart and Soul program. We found a decade ago there was a civic health analysis and research done on Pennsylvania. And, at the time, we rated almost dead last in bringing people together to solve issues in communities. This was shocking. Here we were, we're a statewide organization, but we are in Philadelphia, and right down the street, the Declaration of Independence was written by a group of leaders, and here, and they worked it out. Why weren't we? And it was a question that we had, and it wasn't that people were not working in their communities and giving back, but what we were seeing and what the research showed is that people were working within their own circles, within their own groups, but they didn't step out of their lanes to solve problems together across those lanes. And so that we needed to have programs that built that muscle, that civic muscle and culture to work across different lanes. And so that's what we have done for the last decade with programs like Community Heart and Soul, but we saw it in youth education as well. At the time, with the way the funding formula worked and has been working in the state of Pennsylvania, there was a real need for teen programming. And so we partnered with the Pennsylvania Department of Ed and their Office of Commonwealth Libraries to build programs that would create spaces of belonging where teens could come to libraries as well as after-school sites. The Erie County Library is one of those sites and has worked with us for a number of years to take those books off the shelves, talk about issues that mattered most to teens, and for them to take action in their community around those issues. So have we redefined the humanities? Absolutely. And that's what we have worked to do, to reframe them hand in hand with the people of Pennsylvania, to put them to work for us.
As you know, Mark Sherman was on the air here, and he did a great job talking about Community Heart and Soul. And it was fascinating to me how everything was so grassroots, down to earth, people to people. In this day and age of high tech and the internet, it's sort of different to go head to head with people nowadays, isn't it? How do you feel about that?
Well, it is. And a big thing that we can do with the humanities is, it is practicing that muscle of listening to different people's perspectives on issues that they find very important. And it's not easy work. And it's work that you have to continue to work at to find common ground and understanding, but it's well worth it to bring people together around and to take action. I think about in particular teens in Erie and some of the work that they did that to take action in their community. They had read I believe it was a young adult novel called The War Outside, a story about the German and Japanese internment camps. And they talked about the issue of housing insecurity in Erie, and decided to take action in the community by creating what they called blessing bags filled with essential items, and distributed them all across the city. So it's a beautiful thing to see folks come together to think about the kind of difference that they can make in their communities.
How often does your board meet? And then in your area of responsibility, how do you determine where your efforts will be centered, say, in the next year or two?
Well, we come together 3 times a year. We're going to actually have a board meeting coming up on May 31st, and we're in the process of strategic planning. And we go through a strategic planning process every 3 to 5 years. We work, because we are an affiliate with the National Endowment for the Humanities. The NEH actually sends in a team to work with us to assess the kind of impact that we're making across the state. And we did that process about 2 years ago. And as part of our strategic planning, we actually talked with, we did quite a extensive external review to do interviews all across the state and survey to really get a temperature check on, how effective are we in your communities, and also what needs could we be addressing in the future. And on the 31st, we're going to be getting together our entire staff and board at the August Wilson African American Cultural Center in Pittsburgh to talk about just that.
Excellent. How do you get reviewed? The board may review you, your staff, but how does your organization get reviewed, say, relative to humanities, just in general? How do they benchmark you?
Absolutely. We do what we call participatory work. We work with rather than for. So throughout the entire process of a project, we work with individuals in a community to actually build the programs and to collectively set goals of what kind of changes do we want to see as part of a program. And we assess that as we're implementing the program. So we really see the work that we do, the assessment work that we do, as something that we do in real time, that we build with the community and with individuals across the state. We even do our research this way. We've had a project called the PA Humanities Discovery Project, where we have asked over 1,000 folks took our surveys. We did 8 focus groups. I mean, the list goes on and on. A simple question, not to organizations, but to practitioners, people who use the tools of the humanities, if it's for education purposes in a museum or a university, or for healing, or for connection by creating a mural in the downtown. Why the humanities matter. That's the question that we asked. And we did that with the people of Pennsylvania, and we have been talking with practitioners about what we found as well over the course of the last year and a half.
As you look forward, your planning can go 1, 2, 5 years out. It seems like you have a more program-oriented design, so to speak. You're working more on a timeline relative to each program rather than as a whole organization. Is that a fair statement to make?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
As I'm looking to the future, we have in the last decade put the humanities in action to make a difference in people's lives. And through the pandemic and in recent years, what has bubbled up in our work in communities and what practitioners are telling us is that what's most important is that how the humanities are important to well-being. That the humanities and making that human connection and exploring through stories, through culture, is something that is essential to our being and really the health of our communities. So I see that coming to the fore more and more. I think the pandemic, when we were not able to connect with folks, people really saw the importance of the connection and the humanity in our lives. And so that's what I see as being a real lead for our programs, not only putting the humanities in action to make some changes in your life or community, but to use it for well-being and healing.
If someone wanted to learn as much as they could about your organization, what's the best way?
Oh, absolutely. Get online.
Okay.
That's at www.pahumanities.org. But one thing that I would recommend is when you go to the website, we have this very sweet, wonderful podcast series that we did with Keystone Edge called We Are Here. And we did it during the pandemic when we had the honor of distributing recovery funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities. And we did podcasts to hear on the ground of the importance of the humanities all across the state. And those stories are so special as people talked about the work that they were doing in their local communities. The podcast is called We Are Here.
Laurie Zierer is the Executive Director, PA Humanities. In all your time there, what is one outstanding story? Maybe you have a favorite story or two that really inspired you to participate in your organization.
I think the most inspirational project that I was involved in was one that was named by the local community. It's called Chester Made. It's a project that we started, it was a decade ago when we had this idea that storytelling could bring people together. And we were invited in the city of Chester to really think about how to connect the downtown with the local university, Widener University, and we used storytelling and found what mattered most in the community. The community not only named the project Chester Made, but we created in the downtown for the first time a makerspace out of plywood in a storefront that was not being used, so that the community that wanted to, with artists and local entrepreneurs, that they could hand in hand rebuild the downtown with them. It was the most inspirational project of my career, and it was incredible to see residents lead the project and use stories and building to do the community as well as economic development that was needed in Chester.
Do you ever meet or communicate with other organizations that are like you in other states?
Oh, absolutely. We have a network of state humanities councils across the nation and in a number of different territories. There are actually 56 of us, and we annually come together to share our stories, our learning, and I'm happy, and proud to say that we're a leader in redefining the humanities in people's lives. And we're looked to across the nation for the incredible work that we're doing right here in Pennsylvania.
I noticed your website has, or rather encourages, participation. I'm looking at the Stories from Black Pennsylvania page where it actually asks if you have a story. That seems to be a successful project for you.
Yes, I'm so excited about that. We're going to be launching that program, Voices of History, with Pulitzer Prize winning Isabel Wilkerson. She wrote the book Cast. We're going to be launching that on May 30th at the August Wilson African American Cultural Center, and begin collecting stories. It's a digital stories collection project on the Black experience across Pennsylvania, collecting stories around family, migration, and citizenship. We'll be at the August Wilson House in Pittsburgh, and we're coming to Erie with Erie Black Wall Street. We're working with Dr. Rhonda Matthews, and we'll be starting to collect stories over the summer. We're excited to have that in the Erie area and to lift up the stories around the Black experience in the Northwest region.
How much do you depend on volunteers for all this outreach? You have a great staff, good leadership. How do you manage volunteers?
Well, it's baked into our formula as a state partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Yes. So for every dollar we receive, we in kind work with local partners and volunteers to match those dollars through not only with partners and volunteers, but also other funders. So we have always worked in partnership and collaboration with others. It is just baked into our DNA to do the work in that way.
You've got some really outstanding ideas. I came across, how would the U.S. Constitution be different if you were in the room? We always hear all this political arguing, what it means. This is a great exercise. What would you do if you were sitting there having to write some portion of the Constitution? Wouldn't that be interesting?
Absolutely. And, with that project, we were honored to do that with young people, teens through early 20s. And we just simply asked, what would you do if you were in the room? It was inspired, of course, by Hamilton.
Yes.
And as part of that project, we asked young people, what would you do if you were in the room? And collected submissions from across the state and took a whole group of young people and they got to bring along another to see Hamilton on Broadway and to really chew on that with us on Broadway to think about that. And we continue to do that work actually right now. We're gearing up for the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and we're working across the state to pilot with local libraries of how do we set the table for this conversation around the Declaration of Independence in 2026 with the community, not just bringing in the text to take a look at, but how do we set the table with the community of what issues matter around the Declaration of Independence. So yes, we always have an innovative new reframing with local communities and young people around these enduring questions of not only what it means to be human, but how do we live together in the world to respect and value everyone's contributions.
I encourage everyone interested to go to your website, an opportunity to get on the mailing list. You have a lot of different things someone can check off, so someone's interest can be piqued just by maybe even one or two things that you do. And of course, you're at pahumanities.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you.